All the communities developed emergency response plans approved by NEMO. In order to develop the plans, district workshops were carried out and then individual workshops for each village. A number of questions and scenarios were presented to the communities to help them consider things that might happen during a disaster, such as what their actions would be if people were missing from the community after a flood or if evacuees were misbehaving in the shelter. The responses were put into a table format by the district coordination team and presented back to the community for correction. Once the community was satisfied with the plan, it was presented to NEMO for comment. Changes made by NEMO were then presented back to the community and, once accepted, the final plan was printed onto UV-resistant plastic material. The plans were then handed over to the community to be displayed at a prominent place in the village so that the whole community could share them.
But just as the CDRTs were considering the hypothetical consequences of floods and hurricanes, for some communities, disaster became a reality.
In June of 2008, Tropical Storm Arthur caused severe flooding in southern Belize, especially in the district of Stan Creek. Houses were washed away and communities disappeared beneath floodwaters. Many had to evacuate and were left homeless after the floodwaters passed through their homes.
The Belize Red Cross National Intervention Team, made up of volunteers from across the country, was among the first to respond and was central in the response effort to Tropical Storm Arthur. The National Intervention Team, which had been formed after Hurricane Dean, had developed further under the DIPECHO project, which provided both training and equipment, especially in the areas of water and sanitation. Other training, in cooperation with the Ministry of Health, had been done in vector control. During Arthur, the National Intervention Team was mainly involved in the assessment of families and distribution of food and relief items. In addition, they took responsibility for the provision of potable water in communities where the normal supply had become polluted. Once the distribution of water became unnecessary, awareness activities regarding water safety were carried out and chlorine tablets distributed.
The relief effort for Tropical Storm Arthur continued well into the following months and was still ongoing when in October the National Intervention Team was called on again to respond in Cayo and Belize districts to floods caused by Tropical Depression 16.
Whilst Tropical Depression 16 mainly affected the district of Cayo and the Belize River Valley, other areas were affected, including the project village of Hope Creek down in Stan Creek district. The river began to rise as it had in Arthur, but this time the community was equipped and had their response plan ready. Throughout the night, the community disaster response team members stood watch over the river. By the time the waters eventually flooded the village, those in the threatened housing had already been evacuated to the shelter.